After 17 years of working with Australians on their finances, sitting across from people at every stage of life, but especially in the years approaching retirement, certain things come up again and again. Not regrets exactly, but things people wish someone had told them clearly earlier when they still had enough runway to do something about it. So in this video, I want to share the ones that come up most consistently. The things I keep seeing people wish they'd known 20 years ago. Not generic money advice, not start investing early or spend less than you earn. The specific things that show up in real planning conversations with real people and that are still worth understanding now, wherever you are. This is general in nature, so it's important to consider your own situation because everyone's circumstances are different. But what I'm going to share comes from 17 years of watching what actually plays out. The first thing is that the financial plan and the life plan are not the same thing. And most people only ever build one of them. They build the financial plan, the super contributions, the investment portfolio, the mortgage repayment strategy, the retirement number. All of it carefully constructed, all of it pointing toward a destination. But the destination itself, what retirement actually looks like, what it feels like, what gives it meaning, that part stays vague. And what I see consistently is that the people who arrive at retirement most prepared aren't always the ones with the most money. They're the ones who thought carefully about what they were building toward, not just what they were building. The practical implications of this is simple but significant. At some point in your 50s, ideally well before retirement, it's worth sitting down and genuinely asking, what does a good retirement actually look like for me? Not a number, a life. What are you doing? Who are you spending time with? What gives you structure? What gives you purpose? Because without that picture, no number will ever feel like enough. And you'll keep building past the point where the building is serving you. The second thing is that purpose is a financial planning issue, not just a personal one. Most people don't think of it that way. Purpose feels like a philosophical question, something to figure out eventually, maybe in retirement, when there's time. But what I see in practice is that people who haven't sorted out their sense of purpose make worse financial decisions in retirement. They underspend because nothing feels settled. They delay decisions because they're waiting for certainty that doesn't arrive. They hold on to assets they should restructure because change feels uncomfortable when everything else already feels unfamiliar. Purpose isn't soft. It has direct financial consequences. And the earlier you think about it, not just what you're retiring from, but what you're retiring to, the better those financial decisions become. The third thing is that health is a financial asset. And I say that not as a wellness observation, but as a planning reality. The early years of retirement are typically the most active. The window for big travel, physical adventure, and high energy experiences is roughly the first 10 years. After that, energy and capacity naturally reduce. So the financial plan that assumes you'll spend heavily in years 1 through to 10 only works if your health supports it. And what I see quite often is people in their 50s treating health as something they'll get to after they retire. But the habits you build now determine the capacity you have then. The investment in your physical and mental health in the decade before retirement is one of the highest return investments you can make. Not just personally, financially. The fourth thing, and I've touched on this in other videos, but it's worth saying directly here. Most people find it genuinely hard to spend what they've built. Not just in retirement, in the years leading up to it. The accumulation habit runs so deep that switching from building to spending feels wrong. Even when the numbers say it's completely fine. Even when the plan supports it entirely. And what I wish more people understood earlier is that the plan was always meant to be used. Not preserved, not protected indefinitely, used. The trip you keep putting off, the experience you keep deferring, the thing you've been saying you'll do when the time is right. The time being right is a feeling, not a number. And for a lot of people, the number has been right for longer than they realise. The fifth thing is about giving, specifically the timing of it. Most people think about passing on wealth as an estate planning problem, something that happens after they've gone. But the average age of inheritance in Australia is in the mid-50s. By that point, most people have already bought their home, raised their children, built their careers. The money arrives after the window, when it would have made the most difference. What I wish more people thought about earlier is whether giving deliberately, while they're still here to see what it does, is a better version of the same intention. The same dollar has a completely different impact depending on when it arrives. And the person giving it gets to be part of that. That's worth thinking about well before it becomes an estate planning question. And the sixth thing, and probably the most important, is that getting proper advice early changes the trajectory. Not because the decisions are complicated, although some of them are, but because having a clear, structured view of your position, what you have, what you need, what that gap actually is, removes the guesswork that leads to the most common mistakes. People who delay getting advice don't just miss out on the planning, they miss out on the permission. Permission to spend, permission to give, permission to ease up when the numbers say they can. And permission is often the thing that makes the biggest practical difference. None of these things are complicated. That's actually the point. The financial mechanics, the contributions, the tax, the structures, those can be worked through. They have solutions. But the things that actually determine whether your retirement works, the life behind the plan, the purpose, the health, the permission to use what you've built, those require a different kind of attention. And the earlier you give them that attention, the better everything else works. This is general in nature, so it's important to consider your own situation, because everyone's circumstances are different. But the patterns I've described show up consistently enough to be worth taking seriously. If you're approaching retirement and want structured guidance rather than figuring this out alone, I work with Australians in exactly that position. You can find details below.